Hey guys, welcome to another limited review video here on the Nitzahon Magic channel. This time we're looking at the best colorless commons and uncommons. This list is kind of good to know because these are the kinds of cards that you should take if you're trying to stay open in the early going of a draft, because you're trying to see what colors are going to be open later that you should jump into instead of taking cards early and then seeing a color's not open. Some people really like staying open in draft. And these are creatures that allow, and spells in general, that allow you to, because they're powerful in general, and they fit into any deck. I included artifacts in this list as well, in considering what the best commons and uncommons were, in addition to the colorless Eldrazi. I didn't include like cards with Devoid, because you can't technically play those in any deck. They're colorless in terms of like once they're in play, but basically when they're in your hand, I mean, they're still technically colorless in your hand too, but the fact you have to spend colored mana on them makes them not really count towards this list. So let's look at the best uncommons in colorless. Ulamog's Despoiler, I think, is number 3. He's a 6 mana 5/5. And if you have your opponent has 2 cards exiled, you can exile them, and he comes into play as a 9/9. Obviously, he's going to be incredibly powerful in especially blue-black decks, where it looks like that's where you're going to have the greatest critical mass of ingest. And he'll be able to come into play as a 6 mana 9/9 pretty frequently in decks that really come together in that archetype. But he's also a 6 mana 5/5, which is fine. He may not be as pickable early as some of the later cards we're gonna look at, number 2 and 1, for example. But I think he's still a pretty decent early pick because of his flexibility. And actually, every color has a way to exile things. It's just that blue and black do it the best. But even if you're in red or white, you have ways to exile things that you can take advantage of with Ulamog's Despoiler. And 6 mana 9/9 is going to be pretty hard for your opponent to deal with when he really comes together. The second best uncommon, I think, in colorless is Deathless Behemoth, a 6 mana 6/6 for Vigilance. I'm already sold. But on top of that, he's another one who benefits more from a certain strategy, but he's actually better outside of that strategy, because on top of that, he can return from your graveyard to your hand if you sacrifice 2 Eldrazi Scions. So if you're in the, looks like black green has the greatest critical mass of ways to make Eldrazi Scions, but again, every color can make them. So he's good in any deck, but he's going to be at his best there and going to be really hard to get rid of there without exiling him, which he can be in this format. But it's also a card that your opponent may not want to put back into your graveyard when they're using an Eldrazi Processor's ability like Ulamog's Despoiler, because then that could allow you to get back your 6 mana 6/6 with Vigilance. So, although Ulamog's Despoiler kind of just laughs at a 6/6 if his Processor ability happens. And I think the best of these is Bane of Bala Ged. A lot of people were disappointed that the Eldrazi in this format didn't have Annihilator, and Bane of Bala Ged's about as close as you can get to Annihilator in this format. Whenever it attacks, your opponent has to exile 2 permanents, so it also feeds cards like Ulamog's Despoiler. It can feed any of your other processors. Granted, he costs 7 mana, so he's not going to come down and be able to help out your early processor abilities, but when he's there, I mean, just making your opponent sacrifice 2 permanents every time you swing with your already massive creature is just brutal, as you probably know from having to play against Annihilator. So I think Bane of Bala Ged is the best of the colorless uncommons, and I can see people first picking it to try to stay open on a pretty regular basis, along with Deathless Behemoth, especially if a pack is otherwise unexciting without any really great removal or a bomb or something like that. And so now we'll move to the best commons. This was a little harder. There aren't that many colorless commons. I think the third one might be a little bit of a stretch, but we'll see. And at number 3, I have Hedron Blade, one of the few equipment in the format. It's a 1 mana equipment, so that's more appealing than most equipment already. It does cost 2 to equip, and it gives your dude a +1/+1 bonus. But what makes it, I think, fairly playable is that whenever that creature gets blocked by 1 or more colorless creatures, your creature equipped with this Hedron Blade gets Death Touch. And there are tons of colorless creatures in this format. I haven't done a count yet, but every color, more or less, except white, actually, has some Devoid creatures. And then there's the colorless creatures we've already talked about, and one more we're going to talk about on this list as well. So I think, in addition to a pretty decent bonus for the mana investment, also being able to make your opponent unwilling to block your guys with their colorless creatures is pretty good. Granted, the downside about this card that I think may make it not that great is that Eldrazi Spawn can still just sort of chump block, and you don't really care if you lose those. You don't care if the dude has Death Touch because you're blocking with a 1/1 anyway. So that's kind of the downside with Head-Drawn Blade, but I think it's definitely going to get sided in a lot, and I think it could end up even being main deckable from time to time. The second best uncommon, I think, is definitely main deckable. It's a 5-mana 4/4, already an okay rate, and he adds 2 to your mana pool. So in any sort of ramp strategy, you're definitely going to be wanting to pick up Kozilek's Channeler. You know, if you open up a big mythic Eldrazi in your first pack, then Kozilek's Channeler is a pretty great second pick. He can help you ramp really easily, and he's a decent body for what he costs. But the best colorless card is, I think, Scour from Existence. It's 7 mana to exile any permanent at instant speed. I think a lot of people wanting to stay open will be willing to even first pick this sometimes, even though it's pretty costly. This isn't going to be the fastest format, and your Kozilek's Channeler can help you ramp into it even earlier, as can other ramp strategies. It's just a really flexible card. Obviously, can deal with any problem permanent, whether it's a bomb enchantment or a bomb creature. There aren't really bomb artifacts in this format, as this list helps indicate. No, I don't think there is a bomb artifact at all. There's bomb colorless creatures, but that's not the same thing. But Scour from Existence can deal with any and all of it, and it feeds ingest strategies and process, that want to have things exiled for their processors, in addition to being a really efficient, flexible, well, not that efficient, a really flexible removal spell, I should say. It's not especially efficient. Anyway, that's what I think the best colorless commons and uncommons are. The next few I still have more limited review videos I'm working on, and those are going to be about what the archetypes are, some of which I've hinted at here in these videos, and what the 10 best rares and mythics are to open in your first pack, like what are the bombiest rares basically, as well as 10 cards that are sort of trying to trick you into playing them but aren't actually all that good, just like I did for Magic Origins, if you were a subscriber then as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to enter into the Battle for Zendikar draft giveaway. There should be an annotation at the end of this video showing you how to do that if you haven't done it yet.